some quinacridone red and just keep pulling toward like where we have the ears. Hey friends, welcome to this class. So we're going to paint this bunny rabbit, and the first thing I would like you to do is use masking fluid for watercolors to apply toward the whiskers. So very gently, it's like I'm barely touching the paper. The thinner the rigger brush, the better, because then you can definitely create these thinner lines. How are we gonna paint it? So my idea is to paint a fluffy animal, wet on wet, and that's how we'll create the smooth layering and everything will look fluffy. So I'm gonna wet the rabbit and I'm gonna show you where I'm gonna go on the outside. So this is just the muzzle. I wanna keep control here. So I don't want the colors to bleed toward the outside. But here, I can go outside of my rabbit and wet the background too. This is a thicker watercolor paper. It's almost 300 pounds. It would take a little longer to dry the first layer. So I'm probably gonna focus on a different painting at the same time. So my palette has ISO yellow, imidazzle yellow, quinacridone red, and then burnt sienna, Van Dyke brown, yellow ochre. I normally use raw sienna, or both actually, but raw sienna is a little too granulated, and so I'm just gonna use yellow ochre and then cobalt blue, phthalo blue, and indigo. And I'll wet it for another minute. I am going to grab my long coal size 4 brush, Songbird. I'm going to start with a little bit of blue actually for the white areas. There's my cobalt blue, water-like ratio, and some of the quinacridone red. Where do we see some blue, right? I'd say like where we see the light areas, we can use a little bit of blue here. We can use on the tip of the ear here. And let's see, you want this to be water to milk like ratio because you want the paint to spread. You don't want it to just stay in one area. You kind of want this to spread. Same thing, water to milk like ratio. Quinacridone, I'm sorry, this is yellow ochre. And then there's my quinacridone red. Very gently. You don't want to like overly mix the colors. So the muzzle area, I actually didn't wet the background. The muzzle has some of that, and if you want it to be like more like warmer, add some more quinacridone red. So that's the nose area, and then we can go a little higher right here, a little too much of that pink, so I grab more yellow, but this is water to milk like ratio. And let's focus on like this side is very highlighted, so we don't want to add too much paint. Some paint can bleed in this area, but we don't want too much of it to flow over. We can go even add this yellow tone to the other areas where we see color in the fur, like around the eye, for example, because all the other colors we're going to use are like burnt sienna, for example, and so on. But this needs to be water to milk like ratio. And let's go for the ear, the inside. We can see it's see-through, right? So we can leave like, we don't have to fill it all with a color. We can just very gently add a little bit of that raw sienna, yellow ochre, quinacridone red. Here, I didn't wet the background, so now you can see how the paint is stopping, right? So I wanted to have that control. So I'm looking for the yellowish areas, but also darker areas where I can add some of this yellow ochre, and quin red. Maybe a little more pink just because it's a nose. Whatever I feel like I see a little bit of yellow and also like the mid-tones through the fur. Now part of the leg is highlighted, it's the top part. So I don't want to go over exactly there because we're going to add background. With the background, we're going to create the contrast. So more of this half and half like ratio. If this half and half like ratio, and this is quinacridone red too. Feels if that feels too diluted with water, then go for like a heavy cream-like ratio. So it's still spreading, and you know what? It does feel a little too spready. So now I'm trying to go for more like a heavy cream-like ratio. So the ratio between water and paint. Cream top too. Not maybe cream top. I feel like now it's too early when I do it here. Because when you start using this creamy paint, so cream top like ratio, this is burnt sienna quinacridone red, you start removing water actually from the paper too. So it becomes more like, almost try brushing. This is yellow ochre too. I just grab yellow ochre and just going for the midtones. So I'm going a little lower here. This is like the right side. There's a little bit of that brown here, but it's time for me to introduce a little bit of something grayish, right? So to me, it's going to be like a Van Dyke brown, and I'm not even going to clean the brush, and cobalt blue. Van Dyke brown, cobalt blue, creamy paint. This is becoming like on the border of like heavy cream to cream top. And cobalt blue. A lot of times I'll also add some quin red, so I'm going to grab quinacridone red too. My palette is really simple if you think about it, because I haven't changed much of the colors that I use. It's just basically like sometimes I'll go for like raw sienna all the time, and sometimes I'll switch back to my yellow ochre, but it's really stays pretty simple overall. So here we go in on the inside a little bit of the ear. It's pretty light overall, but before we move on here, let's make sure that we add enough of the darks toward the face here, because we need to divide the areas a little bit. So you have to kind of move around a lot, because one area of the paper will dry faster and it's easy to get in trouble a little bit. So we kind of have to just decide what's more important a lot of times. Like, is it how important is to add color here or there, right? I'm gonna grab some Van Dyke brown and the cobalt blue, just a little more darks here. I feel like it just to have these shadows here. Now, where else I see shadows? So as you see, I kind of walked away from the face, and the face is almost too dry. So I have to quickly grab now my Rigger 2. This is my Rigger 2 brush. And what is on this brush? Something darker. I need to add some more darks here. As a matter of fact, Indigo Van Dyke brown. Last minute to add colors here. You can see how the paint has dried already. I'm gonna pull it up a little bit with this Rigger brush. It's just a damp brush. Last minute to do anything. Darks. And then this should be way darker. This is creamy paint. So there's a reason why the paint is not spreading much, but also it's a damp paper now. It just feels damp. And then a little more shadows here. This is where the eye is. This is where the area needs to be darker. Now, if I want to lift, my last chance to lift. So this is my Rigger 2 Songbird. I actually pretty much missed it, but maybe not everywhere. So ideally you want to lift from the white fur toward the brown fur, like here. There you go. Actually, I got lucky, it's still wet enough to lift, but a lot of times it's super hard to lift. I'm gonna have to like re-wet the muzzle, which is a good thing, because then I'll show you what I do when I don't have enough time. But also, well, we need to re-wet it just to add like some darks. I'm gonna show you what's happening now. It's too dry. So if I add it, like, well, it's a tiny bit like still damp, but this is where you want, if you can, just add a little more darks on the bottom of the nose, like this. So a little bit of that, and then keep lifting if you can. Some quinacridone red, and just keep pulling toward like where we have the ears, just to create that fur. And of course the lifting part where we can. Let's try to still lift the colors. So I'm gonna go over here. I cleaned my brush, wipe it on a towel. I lift the colors. Now it looks like the rest of the body here is kind of like out of focus. So I wouldn't like stress too much about lifting there. Instead, like try to lift here. One more thing I want to mention about the eye. So we were painting, like even though the eye area was wetted, and we're not painting the eye yet. If you feel like too much paint went in there, just grab a smaller brush. This is my round 3D songbird details, and I'm just gonna lift. If you feel like maybe you lost too much light, like over the lids, just simply try your best to lift. I used to stay away from the eye when I was wetting, and I do that only now if the eye is super light in colors. Like there's no way like I could create nice tonal values and everything compared to the reference image. So I stay away from wetting it so no colors bleed over. But if the eye is darker, in this case it is, then I don't worry about it at all. I'm gonna again let it to dry, and then when we come back to it, we're gonna probably work on the background. Alright, my friends, the painting is finished. I hope you enjoyed it. It's on a looser side for sure. I prefer to keep things like this looser when it comes down to the fur and where we have like some hair, because then you don't get caught in working on details, like overly working actually on those details, and everything kept loose is just much easier. So that's it for this class. Please let me know if you have any questions.